The decision you made at 22 is costing you right now, and the cruelest part is that you cannot feel it yet. There is no alarm, no pain, no moment where the bill arrives. That is exactly what makes it so dangerous. I want you to picture two people, both turning 42 this year. At 22, they started in the exact same place. Same starting salary, around $40,000. Same tiny one-bedroom apartment. Same nearly empty checking account. Same vague plan to get serious about money someday, once things settled down. If you had lined them up side by side at 22, you could not have told them apart. 2 decades later, you would not believe they were ever the same. One of them is quietly free. Not rich in a flashy way, not a mansion or a sports car, but free in the way that actually matters. She could take a lower-paying job she loves tomorrow and be fine. A surprise $2,000 bill is an annoyance, not a catastrophe. When she looks at the next 20 years, she sees options. The other is quietly trapped. He earns almost the same, but he is locked into a job he cannot afford to leave. One broken transmission away from a real crisis, doing quiet math on his phone at midnight about which bill can wait. He is not lazy. He is not stupid. He worked just as hard as she did. And here is the strange part. Neither of them can point to the moment it happened. There was no windfall, no inheritance, no disaster, no single dramatic fork in the road. Just a handful of small, quiet decisions, made over and over, in ordinary weeks that felt completely unremarkable, until those decisions hardened into two completely different lives. This isn't a story about luck, or income, or some secret that rich people know and you don't. It's a story about how the ordinary choices you make in your 20s quietly compound into your 40s, either building a future for you in the background or dismantling one, whether you are paying attention or not. And by the time the difference becomes visible, the years you needed to change it are mostly gone. Let me start with a concept that will reframe how you think about money for the rest of your life. In your 20s, you are not really spending money. You are spending time. Every single dollar you set aside at 22 is not just a dollar. It is the many dollars it would have grown into by the time you reach your 40s. And in your 20s, that multiplier is at its absolute strongest, because it has the most years to work with. This is because of compounding, which is simply money making money, and then that new money making money too, on and on. The effect starts almost invisibly slow and then turns violent near the end. Picture a snowball at the top of a very long hill. For the first stretch it barely grows. You could easily give up, convinced it isn't working. But near the bottom it is enormous, and every roll adds more than the entire first half combined. That bottom of the hill is your 40s and 50s. The top, the small quiet part where it feels like nothing is happening, is your 20s. A dollar invested at 22 has around 40 years to roll down that hill. A dollar invested at 42 has half that, and it never gets to the violent, powerful part. Let me make it concrete, because this is the whole video in one number. When you spend $100 on something forgettable at 25, you did not really spend $100. In the language of your future, at a normal long-term return, that $100 was closer to $300 by your early 40s, and closer to $1,000 by the time you reach retirement. Same receipt. Wildly different truth. Now think about the ordinary stuff that fills a 20s budget. The impulse buys. The 5 subscriptions you forgot you had. The upgrade you stopped caring about a month later. None of it feels expensive in the moment, and that is precisely the trap. Each one is quietly wearing a second invisible price tag, which is the fortune it could have become. You will never see that price on any receipt, but your 42-year-old self pays it in full, with interest. And this is the part that stings once you see it. Every dollar has this second price tag, but in your 20s, the second tag is the biggest it will ever be. Because that dollar has the most time left to grow. The same $100 spent at 42 costs you far less in future terms than it does at 22, which is the exact opposite of how most people behave. Spending freely when it is most expensive and getting careful only once the leverage is mostly gone. The reframe is this. Your 20s are the cheapest your future will ever be to buy, and almost nobody buys it while it is on sale. So let me walk you through the 8 quiet decisions that decide which of those two people you become, and exactly how to flip each one. The first decision is waiting to invest. Most people think their 20s are too early to start, that they will get serious once they earn more. Once the debt is gone, once life finally settles down. But life never fully settles down, and the years you spend waiting are the single most powerful years you will ever have. Watch what waiting actually costs. $200 a month invested at 22, earning a 7% average return, which sits comfortably in the range the stock market has historically delivered over long stretches after inflation grows to roughly $104,000 by 42. Now take the exact same person, same discipline, same $200 a month, but they start at 32 instead. Just 10 years later, they end up with barely a third of that, about $35,000. The only difference was the 10 years of their 20s, and those 10 years alone were worth close to $70,000. Read that again. They did not lose $70,000 by spending it. They lost it by waiting, by leaving the money uninvested while the most powerful decade quietly ran out. That is the tax on hesitation, and it is enormous. And it gets worse the longer you wait, because the penalty is not a straight line, it accelerates. Waiting from 22 to 25 costs you something. Waiting from 25 to 30 costs you far more than that. Every year you delay does not just remove a year of contributions, it removes a year from the tail end of the snowball, which is the single most powerful year of all. This is why the honest advice is never wait until you feel ready or wait until you earn more. It is start with whatever you can, today, because an imperfect start beats a perfect plan you keep postponing. So the single most valuable move available to you is almost embarrassingly simple. Start now, even if it is tiny, because it is the starting that compounds, not the size. And the next decision is the one that quietly eats the very money you could have been investing. The second decision is letting your lifestyle rise as fast as your paycheck. Most people treat every raise as permission to upgrade their life a little, and it feels completely earned, so nobody ever questions it. But every raise you fully spend becomes a bigger life that you now have to fund forever, not just this year. Researchers call this lifestyle inflation, and studies consistently show it is the main reason people can earn dramatically more across their 20s and 30s and yet somehow never feel any richer. Here is exactly what it looks like in real life. You get a raise, so the apartment gets a little nicer, the car gets newer, the groceries, the vacations, the everyday everything all creep up, each upgrade quietly resetting what feels normal, until a doubled income leaves you with the exact same zero at the end of the month. You are running faster and staying in the same place. The gap between what you earn and what you actually keep is the entire game. And in your 20s, that gap is the most powerful it will ever be. Because anything you protect inside it has the longest possible time to grow. And here is the fix, because I am not telling you to live like a monk. The trick is to let your saving grow faster than your lifestyle. Every time your income rises, send a solid chunk of that raise straight into investing before it ever hits the part of your account you spend from, and then enjoy the rest with zero guilt. Put a number on it, because it is startling. Say you get a $400 a month raise and you send half of it, $200, straight into investing before you ever adjust to it. Over 20 years at a normal long-term return, that single habit becomes well over $100,000 from one raise you barely noticed giving up half of. And you still enjoyed the other $200 every month the entire time. You still feel richer, because you are. You just quietly become wealthier at the same time, instead of only looking it. The people who win this decade are almost never the highest earners. They are the ones whose saving rate climbed a little faster than their lifestyle, every single time life gave them more. And speaking of things that silently drain that gap, let me talk about the one almost everyone treats as totally normal. The third decision is treating high-interest debt as normal. Most people in their 20s carry a credit card balance and mentally file it under just part of being an adult, like a subscription that is simply always there. But the average rate on cards for people who carry a balance is now above 22%. And at that rate, a credit card is compound interest running in reverse, aimed directly at you, working against your future exactly as hard as investing would have worked for it. Everything we said about the snowball rolling down the hill and getting more powerful over time, imagine that same force, except now it belongs to the bank and it is pointed at your back. Here is what that really means. On a $4,000 balance at that rate, making only the small minimum payment can stretch the payoff out for well over a decade and can roughly double what the balance ends up costing you. You are not buying things anymore at that point. You are renting them, at a brutal price, long after you have completely forgotten what you even purchased. Now here is the reframe that actually changes behavior. Paying off a card charging 22% is mathematically identical to earning a guaranteed 22% return on your money, tax-free, with zero risk. There is no investment on the entire planet that reliably offers that. So before you try to optimize anything else, you put out that fire. You attack the highest rate balance with everything extra you have while paying the minimums on the rest. And the moment it is gone, you have freed up the exact money that builds the other person's life. Nope, not done yet. Because the next decision is the one people walk right past without ever realizing they are literally turning down free money. The fourth decision is ignoring the free money sitting right in front of you. Most people in their 20s skip their workplace retirement match and never open the tax-advantaged accounts available to them, because retirement feels 1,000 years away and paperwork is boring. But if your employer offers to match your retirement contributions, that is an instant 50 to 100% return on your money, handed to you before the market does a single thing. And walking past it is one of the quietest and most expensive mistakes you can make in this entire decade. Let me explain the term simply, because the jargon scares people off. A match just means that for certain dollars you put into your retirement account, your employer drops in their own dollars alongside yours for free, just for participating. On top of that, there are accounts specifically designed to let your money grow without being taxed along the way, which over decades can quietly save you tens of thousands of dollars simply for choosing the right container to hold the same investments. Here is the everyday version. Two people invest the exact same amount for the exact same number of years. One captures the full match and uses the tax-advantaged accounts. The other does not. Decades later, the first person has a dramatically larger pile, and it has nothing to do with earning more or picking smarter investments. It is purely from refusing to leave free money and tax savings on the table. Put a rough number on it. If your employer matches even $100 a month, that is $1,200 a year of pure free money, and invested steadily across your 20s and 30s, it can quietly grow into well over $100,000 by the time you actually need it. You did nothing extra to earn it, except fill out a form and not opt out. This is the closest thing to a genuine cheat code that personal finance has, and it is probably available to you right now, hidden inside a benefits form you have been ignoring. And the fifth decision is the one that hides behind looking like you are doing well. The fifth decision is spending to look successful instead of building the thing that makes you actually secure. Most people in their 20s quietly spend to signal that they have made it. The right clothes, the right car, the right apartment for the photos, while having almost nothing saved behind the performance. But looking successful and being secure are two completely different things. And in your 20s, chasing the first one almost always starves the second. Here is why it matters far more than it seems. The person with no cash buffer is permanently one emergency away from disaster: a job loss, a medical bill, a car that finally dies for good. And when that emergency hits, and in your 20s, it absolutely will, they are forced into the most expensive decisions imaginable. They sell their investments at the worst possible moment, or they reach for the credit card and reignite the exact fire we just talked about, undoing months or years of progress in a single week. The industry rule of thumb suggests keeping 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses parked in a plain, boring, high-yield savings account, sitting completely still on purpose. It will not make you rich, and that is not its job. Its only job is to make sure that when life happens, you never have to destroy your future to survive a single bad month. Think about the real cost of not having that buffer. The person with no cushion who hits a job loss does not just face the lost income. They often sell investments at the worst possible moment, locking in a loss they never had to take. And they may lean on that 22% credit card to survive, which then compounds against them for years. One bad month with no buffer can quietly cost more than the buffer itself ever would have, several times over. Meanwhile, the person who kept 3 to 6 months of expenses boring and safe simply rides the same emergency out, sells nothing, borrows nothing, and comes out the other side with their future fully intact. Real wealth, the quiet kind, almost never looks like the people trying hardest to look wealthy. The loudest lifestyle in the room is very often the emptiest bank account in the room. And there is one more decision, maybe the quietest of them all, that ties every other one together. The sixth decision is refusing to invest in your own earning power. Most people in their 20s obsess over cutting small expenses, the daily coffee, the occasional takeout, while completely ignoring the one lever with the highest ceiling of all, which is how much they can earn in the first place. But you can only cut your spending down to zero while your income has no cap, and in your 20s you have the most time to let a higher income compound alongside everything else. Here is the trap. Trimming $5 a day feels productive and virtuous, and it does matter a little. But a single skill that moves you from a $40,000 job to a $60,000 job is worth $20,000 a year, every year, for the rest of your career, which dwarfs any amount of coffee you could ever skip. Think of the certification, the harder role nobody else wants, the skill your industry quietly pays a premium for. Researchers who study lifetime earnings have found that a large share of a person's total income growth happens in the first decade of their career, which means your 20s are when raises compound the hardest, exactly like investments do. And raises compound in a way people miss. Every future raise, every bonus, every new job offer is usually calculated as a percentage on top of where you already are. So a bigger salary at 25 quietly lifts every number that comes after it for the next 40 years. Negotiating one extra $5,000 early is not a one-time $5,000. It is the higher base that every future percentage raise is stacked on top of, which can add up to hundreds of thousands over a career. So while you are protecting your gap and starting to invest, spend real energy becoming more valuable, because a bigger shovel fills the hole far faster than counting grains of sand. The seventh decision is chasing a shortcut instead of trusting the boring path. Most people in their 20s, the moment they get interested in money, go looking for the fast version, the hot coin, the meme stock, the thing a stranger online swears tripled overnight. But study after study of everyday investors consistently shows the same thing. The people who chase the exciting bet almost always underperform the person who did nothing but quietly buy a boring, broadly diversified fund and hold it for decades. A broadly diversified fund just means one investment that owns a tiny slice of hundreds or thousands of companies at once, so you are not betting on any single one. Here is the trap dressed up as opportunity. The get-rich-quick story is loud, emotional, and everywhere, and it is designed to make patients feel stupid. But for every person who won big on a gamble, there is a crowd who quietly lost, and they do not post about it. Researchers have found that the average active trader underperforms the plain market they are trying to beat, mostly because they buy when they feel excited and sell when they feel scared, which is the exact opposite of what works. Meanwhile, the boring investor, buying the same broad fund every month through every scary headline, quietly wins by simply refusing to blow themselves up. The math is almost insulting in how simple it is. Consistency beats intensity. The tortoise genuinely wins. So while everyone around you is chasing the next big thing, your edge in your 20s is to be relentlessly, profitably boring, and let time turn boring into rich. And the last decision is the quiet foundation the other 7 all stand on. The 8th decision is never actually knowing where your money goes. Most people in their 20s have a rough, comforting story in their head about their spending, and that story is almost always wrong, usually by hundreds of dollars a month. But you cannot fix, protect, or grow a gap you have never once measured, and awareness alone changes behavior before you even try. Here is what happens in real life. You feel like you barely spend on anything, and then you actually add it up, and the food delivery, the forgotten subscriptions, the little top-ups quietly total $400 or $500 a month you swore was not there. That is not a small leak. Invested over your 20s and 30s, $500 a month at a normal long-term return grows into a genuinely life-changing number, easily several $100,000. The money to build the free person's life was there the whole time. It was just invisible, because you never looked. Studies of spending consistently show that people who simply track their money without any other change spend meaningfully less, because attention itself is a form of control. You do not need a complicated budget or a spreadsheet that runs your life. You need to look honestly at what actually leaves your account, because the leaks you cannot see are the ones that quietly sink you. Find the gap, and you find the fuel for every other decision on this list. So now you know all 8 decisions. Let me show you exactly how to start flipping them, beginning today. This week, invest $1. I mean that, completely literally. Open an investing account and put a single dollar into it, because the entire point is to break the fear and prove to yourself that starting is allowed, and it is not scary. Most people never begin because beginning feels enormous and official and intimidating, so you make it laughably small. $1 this week quietly destroys that excuse forever, and once the account exists, adding to it is easy. This month, automate it and grab the free money. Set up a small automatic transfer into that investing account every single payday, even if it is just $25 or $50, because automation removes the daily decision, which is the exact point where people sabotage themselves. Then log into your job's retirement plan and contribute at least enough to capture the full employer match, so you stop turning down free money every month without realizing it. One automatic engine now builds your future in the background, and one door to free money finally stands open. This quarter, widen the gap and build your floor. Pick your single highest interest debt and attack it with everything extra you have while paying minimums on the rest, and the moment it dies, roll that whole payment onto the next one. At the same time, begin building your buffer until you have at least 1 month of expenses set aside, on the way to 3 to 6. And pick one concrete way to raise your income this quarter: one skill, one certification, one conversation about a raise or a better role. While you are at it, spend 1 honest hour tracking where every dollar went last month, because that single hour almost always uncovers hundreds you can redirect toward the gap without feeling any real loss. By the end of 3 months, you will have started investing, automated it, captured free money, killed your worst debt, built the beginning of a real safety cushion, and taken one real step toward earning more. That is not a fantasy or a personality transplant. That is 8 decisions turned into a handful of specific, doable moves, and you can start the very first one in the next 10 minutes. And one honest note before we close, because it matters. This video is for educational purposes, not financial advice. Speak with a qualified professional for decisions about your specific situation. The numbers here are meant to show you the shape and the scale of the choices, not to replace a real plan built around your actual life, your actual income, and your actual goals. So let me take you back to those 2 people, both 42 now, both having earned about the same money for 20 years. The free one and the trapped one. What actually separated them was never their income. It was a virtuous cycle running quietly against a destructive one, playing out in ordinary days that never felt momentous. In her virtuous cycle, she started investing early, let her saving outrun her lifestyle, refused to normalize expensive debt, captured every dollar of free money, kept a buffer that protected her from ever sliding backward, and steadily grew what she could earn. Each good decision made the next one a little easier, and time quietly compounded all of it into freedom. In his destructive cycle, he waited to start, spent every raise, carried the balance year after year, skipped the free money, and lived permanently one emergency from the edge. So every setback erased his progress, and time compounded the damage instead of the gains. Neither cycle announced itself. Both just ran, quietly, in the background of completely normal lives, one decision at a time, on days that felt too ordinary to matter. That is the whole secret, and the whole danger at once. None of these choices feel important the day you make them. Skipping the investment this month feels harmless. Spending the raise feels deserved. Carrying the balance feels normal. And it is only when you stack a decade of those small invisible days on top of each other that they quietly harden into a life you either love or resent. The good news is that the same thing is true in the other direction. You do not need a dramatic transformation. You need a handful of quiet, boring, correct decisions, repeated until time takes over. Here is what I need you to sit with. Your 20s are the cheapest your future will ever be, and the mistakes are quiet precisely because they do not hurt yet. They send no bill and set off no alarm. By the time they finally do, somewhere in your 40s, the most powerful years are already spent and there is no getting them back. But you are hearing all of this right now, today, which means you still have the one and only thing that truly matters, which is time left on the clock. That is the entire advantage, and it is enormous, and it is fading a little every single day you wait. The choice is simply whether you want your 20s to quietly build your future or quietly steal it. The person who is free at 42 is not the one who earned more. They are the one who started sooner. So start sooner. Start today. Start with $1 and let time do what only time can do. If this shifted how you see your next 20 years even slightly, that is the whole point, and the best time to act on it is while the feeling is still fresh, today, with something tiny. Your future self is not built in one dramatic leap. It is built in quiet, ordinary decisions like the one you get to make in the next 10 minutes.